Every year, billions of people board an airplane, buckle their seatbelt, and stare out a small oval window at nothing more exciting than clouds. That's the deal. That's what flying is supposed to be. Quiet, predictable, forgettable. But sometimes, for a handful of passengers, that window becomes something else entirely. A frame. A lens pointed at a moment nobody can explain. A flicker of light where there shouldn't be one. A shape that moves the wrong way. A sound that doesn't match anything the aircraft is supposed to make. These are the moments that get recorded almost by accident, uploaded without much thought, and then never really go away. Investigators look at them. Pilots look at them. Millions of strangers online look at them. And after all that looking, most of them are still sitting in the same place. Unexplained. Here are some of the strangest. It was a red-eye flight, somewhere over open water, the kind of leg where half the cabin is asleep before the seatbelt sign even turns off. A passenger, near the wing, couldn't sleep. Bored, restless, she pointed her phone camera out the window mostly to pass the time. That's when she noticed it. A single point of light, steady and pale, sitting just off the wingtip. Not blinking like a beacon. Not moving like another aircraft's position, lights usually do. Just holding there, matching the plane's speed almost perfectly. At first, she assumed it was a reflection. Cabin lights bouncing off the window, maybe. She turned her phone screen off. The light stayed. She cupped her hand around the window to block the glare. The light stayed. For nearly 4 minutes, the object kept pace with the aircraft, never drawing closer, never falling behind. Then, without any sudden movement, it dropped straight down and vanished into the darkness below, as if it had simply lost interest. She showed the footage to the flight attendant, who watched it twice and had no explanation to offer. No other passengers on that side of the cabin happened to be filming. No air traffic reports from that route and that night have ever surfaced publicly. All that exists is 4 minutes of shaky footage and a light that behaved like nothing anyone can name. Not every unexplained moment is something you see. Sometimes it's something you hear. On a mid-afternoon domestic flight, passengers began noticing a low, steady hum running through the floor of the cabin, distinct from the usual engine drone. It wasn't loud. It wasn't alarming, not at first. But it had a strange, almost rhythmic quality, rising and falling every few seconds like a heartbeat traveling through metal. One passenger recorded audio, mostly as a joke, captioning it, "Is this normal?" as she sent it to a friend on the ground. Within the recording, the humming briefly synchronizes with a faint metallic ticking, then stops entirely for nearly 10 seconds before returning as if nothing had happened. The airline's maintenance team, when later asked about the incident by curious passengers, said nothing on the aircraft's system logs indicated any irregularity during that flight. No fault codes. No unusual vibration readings. According to the airline, the hum was likely nothing more than ordinary airflow turbulence around the fuselage. Maybe that's exactly what it was. But anyone who has listened to the full clip knows that ordinary airflow doesn't usually sound like it's counting down to something. Night flights make strange things happen to glass. With the cabin lit and the sky outside pitch black, a window stops being a window and starts acting like a mirror. Passengers see themselves. They see the seat back in front of them. They see the aisle behind them. On one long-haul flight, a passenger filming a video of the sunset transition into night noticed something odd in the reflection layered over the darkening sky. A second, faint outline of a person standing in the aisle behind her seat. The trouble was, when she turned around, the aisle was empty. The seat behind her was occupied by a sleeping stranger who never moved for the entire 10-second clip. She played the footage back several times, slowing it down, zooming in. The reflected figure appears to shift its weight slightly, the way a person naturally does while standing. No one behind her matches that motion. No flight attendant was passing through the aisle. No one has ever offered a convincing account of what, exactly, the glass was reflecting that night. Optical illusions caused by layered reflections on curved cabin windows are common, and there's likely a mundane answer buried somewhere in the physics of light and glass. But the passenger who filmed it says she still checks that aisle every time she flies, just in case. Most passengers never think about who or what, is actually flying the plane at any given second. Autopilot does the heavy lifting for most of a flight, quietly and invisibly. So, when an aircraft banks sharply without warning, without an announcement, and without turbulence to explain it, people notice. On a flight crossing a remote mountain range, the plane suddenly rolled into a tight, deliberate-feeling turn, steep enough that loose items slid across tray tables and more than one passenger gasped audibly. No seatbelt chime had sounded beforehand. No captain's voice came over the intercom to explain it. The turn lasted perhaps 20 seconds before the aircraft leveled out and continued on its original heading as though nothing had happened. Only afterward did the captain address the cabin, offering a brief, vague explanation about adjusting for other traffic in the area. But nothing on the flight tracking data shared publicly afterward shows another aircraft anywhere near that path at that altitude. Was it a genuine but unlogged near-miss? A weather cell too small to register on public radar? Or something the airline simply chose not to elaborate on? The passengers who felt that plane bank hard to the left, for reasons never fully explained, still don't have an answer. Seatback entertainment systems are famously glitchy. Anyone who's flown more than a handful of times has seen a frozen movie, a stuck loading bar, a map that refuses to update. So when a screen briefly flickers and displays something unusual, the instinct is to assume it's just another software hiccup. But one passenger's screen didn't just glitch. For roughly 3 seconds, in the middle of an in-flight movie, the display cut to a plain black screen with a short string of white text that didn't match anything in the airline's normal system menus, a sequence of letters and numbers that meant nothing to the passenger and, when later shown to an aviation technician, meant nothing to them either. The screen then returned to the movie as if nothing had happened. The passenger, unsettled enough to photograph it before it disappeared, later reached out to the airline, who responded that in-flight entertainment systems occasionally display internal diagnostic codes due to a known software issue, though they couldn't identify the specific code shown. A known issue that nobody could actually identify. That answer, more than the glitch itself, is the part that still bothers people who've seen the photo. Landing at night, especially somewhere without heavy ambient light, pilots and passengers alike rely on runway lighting to make sense of an otherwise featureless dark landscape. On one approach into a smaller regional airport, a passenger filming out the front-facing cabin camera setup available on some aircraft caught something odd. A second set of runway lights, faint and parallel to the real one, several hundred meters off to the side, in a location where no runway or taxiway actually exists. The lights are visible in the footage for roughly 6 seconds before the aircraft passes below them and they disappear from frame. The real runway, correctly lit and positioned, remains visible throughout, and the landing itself was completely uneventful. Ghost lights, phantom runways, and optical mirages caused by ground fog or distant vehicle lights are not unheard of in aviation, and pilots are specifically trained to identify and disregard them. But the passenger who caught this one insists what she saw looked less like a stray reflection and more like an entire second runway, lit and waiting, in a field that has never had one. Perhaps the strangest entry belongs to a flight that never made headlines, never triggered an official investigation, and exists today only because one passenger happened to be recording a mundane video of the wing at the exact right moment. For 11 unbroken seconds, a small, dark, disc-shaped object appears to hover just beyond the wingtip, close enough that its outline is sharp and clearly visible against the pale sky. It doesn't wobble. It doesn't drift the way debris or a bird would. It simply sits there, matching the aircraft's speed with an almost mechanical precision. Then, in a single frame, it's gone. Not fading. Not shrinking into the distance. Just absent, as though it had never been there at all. The passenger didn't even realize what he'd captured until he reviewed the footage after landing. By then, there was nothing more to see, no follow-up sighting, no second witness who happened to be filming the same window. Just 11 seconds, and then nothing. None of these stories comes with a tidy ending. No official report closes the book on the light that paced the wing, the hum that synced with a metallic tick, the reflection with no source, the turn with no traffic, the code with no meaning, the runway with no name, or the object that simply wasn't there a moment later. That's really the point. Flying, for all its modern precision, still happens inside an enormous, mostly empty sky, filled with weather nobody fully controls, light that behaves strangely at altitude, and machinery complex enough that even trained engineers occasionally shrug and say, "We're not sure." Most of the time, that uncertainty resolves itself quietly, explained away by physics, hardware, or plain human error, and nobody ever thinks about it again. But every so often, a passenger happens to be holding a phone at exactly the right second, and the sky offers up something that never gets fully explained. Not because it's necessarily extraordinary. Maybe it's simply because nobody was recording long enough, or from the right angle, or with a camera good enough to capture what really happened. Or maybe, once in a very long while, at 35,000 feet, something genuinely happens that nobody down here has a name for yet. Either way, the footage exists. The questions remain. And the next time you're sitting by the window on a quiet flight, staring out at nothing in particular, it might be worth keeping your phone a little closer than usual. You never know which flight is going to be the one in a trillion.